Welcome to The Explainer. Imagine, just for a second, watching your entire life's work quite literally go up in flames, only to realize years later that that devastating fire was exactly what you needed to change the world. Today, we're diving into the dramatic and honestly surprisingly accidental origin story of America's first mass-produced automobile, the Oldsmobile Curved Dash. We're going to explore how a wild mix of unexpected events, some brilliant engineering, and sheer marketing bravado didn't just build a car, but basically put an entire nation on wheels. Picture this. The date is March 9th, 1901, and disaster absolutely strikes. The Olds Motor Works factory in Detroit, Michigan burns completely to the ground. Now, automotive pioneer Ransom E. Olds had been relentlessly experimenting. We're talking 11 different prototypes spanning steam, electric, and gasoline power. In fact, he was the only American automotive pioneer to produce and sell at least one of each type. But as the flames engulfed that factory, workers were only able to rescue one single solitary vehicle, a small, gasoline-powered runabout. Section 1. The Accidental Automotive Revolution. So, left with literally no other options after the fire, Olds was forced to put his solitary surviving runabout into production. Now sure, there's a bit of historical debate here. One biographer noted that Olds actually had about 300 orders for this car before the fire even happened. But there is absolutely no denying that losing all his other prototypes really forced his hand. He had to focus entirely on this one simple runabout. And what's super fascinating here is how this completely redefines our understanding of automotive history. You know, we so often credit Henry Ford with inventing the assembly line, right? But this simple little Oldsmobile was actually the true pioneer of mass production in the automotive world. Years before Ford popularized the whole concept, Oldsmobile was out there building vehicles on a structured assembly line, using standardized, interchangeable parts. It was a total game changer for how machines were made. Section 2. Anatomy of the runabout. Let's take a look under the hood. This machine, officially called the Model R, became famous for its really distinctive sleigh-like front dashboard, hence the nickname the Curved Dash. But that shape wasn't just some random stylistic choice. It really acted as a bridge between the familiar horse-drawn carriages of the 19th century and the motorized future of the 20th. Rather than relying on all these complex, heavy mechanics, it featured a brilliant, stripped-down engineering design. We're talking a 95 cubic inch, flat-mounted, water-cooled single-cylinder engine pushing out between 4.5 and 5 horsepower. But the real stroke of genius? That was its semi-automatic two-speed planetary transmission. By ditching those complicated, clunky gearboxes, Olds created a vehicle that was incredibly simple for pretty much anyone to operate. The whole thing weighed a mere 700 to 850 pounds and topped out at 20 miles per hour, which, trust me, was plenty fast for the era. So, here is the absolutely crucial point: how this simplistic, lightweight design actually translated to the consumer. Because it was so hyper-efficient to build, Olds managed to price the runabout at just $650. To put that into perspective for us today, that's roughly $19,120. Which meant, for the very first time, a reliable motorized vehicle was actually accessible to the rapidly growing American middle class. You have to remember, in the early 1900s, the automotive market was this crazy world of extremes. On one end, you could buy an ultra-cheap vehicle like the Success for $250, but you were definitely sacrificing durability. It just wasn't going to last. Or, on the other end, you could buy a Ford Model C doctor's car for $850, which straight up priced out a lot of everyday families. By hitting that exact $650 sweet spot, the Curved Dash proved it was a highly dependable, sturdy alternative to the horse, all without alienating everyday buyers with those massive luxury price tags. Section 3. Marketing to the masses. Now, to prove this odd-looking, horseless carriage was truly rugged, Olds embarked on some incredibly highly publicized endurance stunts, and one of the absolute most legendary happened right in 1901. Olds sends his test driver, a guy named Roy D. Chapin, on an 820-mile endurance run from Detroit all the way to the New York Automobile Show. To escape the absolute muddy mire of New York's primitive state roads, Chapin literally drove the car up onto the Erie Canal towpath. Just wild. After a grueling 8-day journey, he finally rolls up to the super-luxurious Waldorf Astoria Hotel. But he was so thoroughly covered in mud and dirt that the fancy hotel staff turned him away at the front door and banished him to the servants' entrance around back. But hey, despite the indignity, the car had survived the trip. And you know what? Chapin's muddy arrival paid off brilliantly.
At that very same auto show, Ransom Olds used this newfound proof of extreme reliability to his ultimate advantage. When a dealer offered to buy 500 cars, Olds used some aggressive bravado, famously challenging the guy to double it. He looked at him and said, "I would like to see you make this order for 1,000 cars." Then the public would drop its jaw and take notice. The dealer actually signed, and while he ultimately sold 750 of those vehicles to the public, the sheer, unprecedented scale of that initial order cemented the brand's national legitimacy basically overnight.
But Olds didn't stop there. Through just relentless marketing, they kept proving to everyone that this car was virtually unstoppable. In 1902, they took a Curved Dash, stripped it down to literally just an engine, a seat, and a radiator, called it the Pirate, and hit an astonishing 54.38 miles per hour on the sands of Ormond Beach, Florida. Then, flash forward to 1905, two Oldsmobiles raced coast to coast from New York out to Portland, Oregon. Navigating flooded rivers and straight-up unpaved wilderness, the winning car, affectionately nicknamed Old Scout, completed the entire transcontinental journey in just 44 days. Section 4. Peak production and evolution. So this combination of demonstrated durability and really accessible pricing completely transformed the manufacturing landscape. Just looking at their production trajectory, you can really see the unprecedented explosion in output. Keep in mind, at this time, most manufacturers considered producing like a dozen cars a year to be a massive success. Oldsmobile built 425 units in 1901. By 1902, that number exploded to 2,500. And by 1903, their assembly line was churning out nearly 4,000 units annually. That officially made Olds Motor Works the largest automobile producer in the United States. At this point, the Curved Dash ceased being just a vehicle and became a total cultural phenomenon. The company was super smart. They marketed the car directly to women, advertising it as a reliable tool for personal independence and a way to escape the drudgery of the home, literally stating the car makes everyone your neighbor. They also targeted municipal agencies, selling runabouts to places like the Boston Fire Department to prove their ruggedness. The car became so popular, it inspired children's toys, and it was even immortalized in popular sheet music with the massive hit song, "In My Merry Oldsmobile." Now, as the years progressed and technology rapidly advanced, the company didn't just rest on its laurels. They made vital running changes to keep the vehicle competitive. The original Model R evolved into the Model 6T in 1904, receiving a larger engine and some much safer drum brakes. By 1905, the Model B featured improved cooling and a reinforced suspension system to better handle those awful, rough roads. Finally, the Model F rounded out the lineup in 1907 with a few final mechanical tweaks before the beloved runabout was officially discontinued. Section 5. Putting America on Wheels. By the time production fully ceased in late 1907, over 19,000 of these little runabouts had been built. That proved, definitively, that there was a massive, untapped market for mass transportation. And naturally, this undeniable, industry-defining success caught the eye of early corporate giants. The momentum built by this little runabout made the brand incredibly valuable. Consequently, on November 12, 1908, General Motors absorbed the Oldsmobile brand into its growing empire, and Oldsmobile would remain a total cornerstone of GM for nearly a century, staying alive all the way until its final closure in 2004. Which leaves us with a genuinely fascinating historical question to ponder. If that tragic factory fire hadn't swept through Detroit in 1901, destroying everything but that little Curved Dash, would Ransom E Olds have focused so intently on this one accessible vehicle? It's kind of incredible to think about how much of our modern world, our assembly lines, our daily commutes, our very way of life, was shaped not entirely by careful corporate planning, but by a single, accidental spark.